I am happy to tell you that so far, at least as we're recording this at 12:45, Tesla is still in the green. And Nicholas Gibbs is here because he's going to help me bring in the good news on Tuesday. And there's a lot of it, actually, Nicholas.
Yeah, there is. It's funny. It seems like every Tuesday there's always breaking news, so you got to love it.
Well, the big one for me right now, kind of crazy, you had pointed out as soon as you got on with me, was the big news from Apple. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so this is wild. For a long time we've been hearing that the Tesla killer is going to be Apple, that all these other OEMs, they're doing their thing, but once Apple does it, it's going to be over. It's going to be game set match, and that'll be it. And yeah, I guess a few moments ago, maybe about an hour ago, we learned that Apple is canning their entire 10-year endeavor into autonomous vehicles, into creating EVs, and essentially the challenge is no more. And so this is a pretty big deal because that team, according to the article I read, had 2,000 plus people as part of it, and now they're going to be taking them and completely porting them over to focus on just AI, presumably generative AI. So it's a big deal. What was your takeaway on this? It's breaking news. So what's your first impressions on it?
Well, my first impression was no shock because under the current leadership, they just can't do anything right. And when I say do anything right, they can do what was already in place when Jobs left. They can do that perfectly. They do it better than Jobs did it. They do it amazingly. Tim Cook is one of the great managers of all time. There's no doubt about it. But in terms of anything else that they've tried to do, like Apple TV, which is I have Apple TV and it's fine, but it's not wonderful. It's not anything like it was supposed to be. The Apple story on the car was either going to be an IO system, some kind of an operating system, or an entertainment system, or it was going to be autonomous driving, or it was going to be, as you mentioned, the actual car. All of these different ideas, and none of them they couldn't find.
Yeah.
They couldn't find an entry point into this world through any of those different approaches.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. I mean, you know, I I actually thought that they were going to become, ironically, the Android of car operating systems. I thought that that was going to be a place where they could play within. Tim Cook said that he wants to be in kind of that interface between the vehicle and the user. But as you can imagine, all these OEMs caught wind of it, so they're definitely not going to play ball. They're not going to just allow Apple to take over in that sense. Um, and yeah, creating vehicles hard, right? And creating autonomy is even harder. And so it's not just creating the vehicle, it's not just production, it's not just manufacturing, it's not just autonomy, it's all those things in one. And so it's pretty fascinating. I mean, I agree with you on Tim Cook. He's very good at buying back Apple stock. So they're very good at doing that. But yeah, Apple's been disappointing for me. It just, in the bigger scheme of things, I'm a huge Apple fanboy. I have nothing but Macs. I have nothing but AirPods. I've got iPhones. But where's the last real innovation? It's been my thing. I mean,
Right.
I don't think their VR headset is that great personally. I think they've missed the boat on a lot of things. I mean, even right now with generative AI, what's up with Siri?
Right.
Like that's the one thing they should have just had nailed on is making sure that Siri could be solid to quickly incorporate LLMs into Siri so that it could be better. And man, Siri's been the same for how long? I mean, even you mentioned Apple TV, even that is not what the actual vision of Steve Jobs was. His
No.
vision was iTunes for TV. So you
Right.
could purchase an episode, a show, the way you would buy a song. And yeah, disappointing. But for Tesla, I love it. It's yet another confirmation of what they're doing is different, that they're different, and that's not as easy. Competition is not just going to come around the corner.
That's a fact. All right. So now we have Teslarado reporting the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, the IIHS, not to be confused with the National uh, transportation, anyway, the national organization,
NHTSA.
NHTSA, they raised the bar for their 2024 top safety awards, requiring improved protection for rear. Let me change my glasses. I had put on a different pair of glasses because I thought I was doing something. Anyway, oh, look at that. I can read now. So they changed their rules, requiring protection for rear seat passengers and pedestrian safety features. Despite the agency's stricter criteria, 71 vehicles earned the top safety pick, so the maximum they could possibly get. And of the 71 vehicles that were selected, 22 managed to qualify for the very, very, very highest level. And one of those, of course, was the Tesla Model Y. Shockingly, I didn't see the Model S on here anywhere, or the Model 3, or the Model X. None of those were on the list. I'm kind of confused because I would think they would all have almost exactly the same capabilities. But I'm glad to see that the Model Y did make the list.
Yeah, I mean, I can sum this up very simply. If you have a family you care about and you love them, put them in a Tesla. If you don't, it's foolish.
Okay. Sawyer Merritt reporting. He says for 2023, the Tesla brand scored repeat wins for overall loyalty to Make, highest conquest percentage. That means the number of people that switched to a Tesla from another brand, alternative powertrain loyalties. So to a BEV as an alternative powertrain loyalty, number one, ethnic market loyalty to Make. I'm confused by that one. I didn't look it up to see exactly what they meant by that one. Anyway, the popularity of both the Model 3 and Model Y among current owners, along with the brand's ability to attract many ICE customers to the BEV space, contributed to Tesla's multiple awards for the second year in a row.
Yeah, it was good to see this. But I don't know. Like, what's your take in general with these awards? Because a lot of times I feel like they're interesting, but I don't know how much they really mean. I I just don't know how meaningful they are. I mean, me personally, when I go to buy a product, I don't look at how many awards they have or rankings of this sort. I look for genuine feedback from end users themselves, right? I don't need a middleman to try to aggregate or do a sample testing for me, right? It's like if I buy something on Amazon, I'm going straight to the reviews,
Right.
right? I'm going to start off with anything that's 4.5 to 5 stars. And if it has less than 1,000 reviews, I'm not even going to look at it, right? So like I quickly do my filter through that, but I'm not looking to see if this has awards or whatnot. I mean, from a safety perspective, I guess it matters because that's a little more, um, I guess, regulated and there's like procedures for it. But things like this, I'm not sure. And I feel like a lot of times they're very subjective and we don't know all the things that go into it. And I guess my biggest, I mean, not to knock it, it's great. I'm happy Tesla is, continuing to have all these good accolades, but I feel like a lot of the times is what's the money behind it? And I think we've just seen so much over time where money, ads, nonprofits that are funded by a Ford, a GM tend to influence a lot of these. And so they just, I don't know, they don't hold up to muster a lot of times for me at least.
Pretty funny because the Consumer Reports is my next article. But anyway, but let's stick on this one for just a second. This one having to do with brand loyalty might affect more not the consumer who's making a decision, but it might affect more the investor who's trying to make a decision. If they see that there's a lot of brand loyalty. I know that again, Apple had such massive high brand loyalty over the years. It impacted me as an investor, not as my decision for the next Apple product, because like you, that's all I buy, but as a knowing how loyal I was, and then seeing that this was a standard certainly impacted me as an investor. So on to Consumer Reports, shocking article by a company that we talk about being bought and paid for and not really being very good at what they do. But they say electrified vehicles, including hybrids and fully electric, are becoming more desirable than their gasoline counterparts. Influential U.S. magazine Consumer Report said on Tuesday, while adding 7 of them to its top 10 list. for their pick list for 2024. 4 of Toyota's electrified vehicles made it to the list, including the Prius and the hybrid version of the popular Camry sedan, Tesla's Model Y, Ford Maverick hybrid, and the BMW's also hybrid, the X5 made it to the list. So a bunch of hybrids and the Tesla Model Y. But Consumer Reports actually coming out and saying good things about electric vehicles.
Yeah, I've already said enough about my thoughts on consumer reports, all this. What I will say though is, and this might sound a little conspiracy theory-ish, whatever however you say that. It's very interesting that in 2023, well, let's go even further back. 2018 all the way up until about mid 2023, we had nothing but GM's going to do this, Ford's going to do this, Volkswagen's going to do this, EV. We're all going to go, all these promises, we're going to convert to 100%, 50%, whatever, all these things about EV. Then it got to a point where we got into 2023 where a lot of these claims, these kind of, ostentatious, I don't know, metrics, KPIs that they kind of set themselves in the future. We're at a point where where are the numbers? Show us the results now. You've been talking about it. Now we're getting to 2023. Where are they? And all of a sudden, about midway, really, I would say maybe like August, September, October-ish of 2023, it was as if everybody got mailed a script. And that script was all of a sudden, people don't really want EVs anymore. It's not what they want. In fact, what they want is hybrids. And all of a sudden, we saw that whole narrative go from about August, September, October to then we started to hear from the auto manufacturers in November, December that they're going to pull back on their EV initiatives. It just seems so structured to me, right? And so seeing this from Consumer Reports, it just kind of feeds into my thought that it seems like there's handshakes happening behind closed doors on what we're going to do, how we're going to steer the narrative, how we're going to pivot without all of us taking a big dumping on our stock. I mean, I don't know if you agree with any of that or if you think that just sounds so out of left field, but it just seems way too orchestrated for me.
So what usually happens in disrupted industries is that the disrupted companies start thrashing about. And the people who support those thrashing industry or companies also start thrashing about. And you saw the New York Times and everybody trying to go online, trying to figure it out, how to become a hybrid, have a real newspaper and a hybrid newspaper at the same time. You saw, Polaroids and Kodaks, trying to have it both ways, trying to find a way into electric cameras or electronic cameras, but also at the same time keep their film business. It never, ever, 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 ever works. But it is the only thing that they can think of when every single product they've introduced is turned away. I mean, you can't have one product introduction after another that the consumer says no to, and not go back to the boardroom and say, we have to have a different plan. We can't just keep introducing full-on BEVs and spend all that money and all that time and all that energy and have them rejected. What is an alternative plan? The alternative plan at Toyota, the alternative plan at all the German companies, all the US, it looks like everybody's going to try at least to get something out of this hybrid environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I not to go on a tangent, I'll circle back. It's pertinent, but I posted on X last night a snippet of Kimball Musk on an interview he had recently, and he was telling a story about when him and Elon were doing the whole Zip 2 and all that, and that I forget who they were in the meeting with, but essentially he's one of the owners or manufacturers, or I forget what it was, but of the Yellow Pages. And he's sitting there saying to Kimball, "You guys think that you're going to replace this?" And he threw the Yellow Pages at Kimball. And Kimball said in the interview, "I could not believe what just happened. It wasn't that he threw this big book at me. It was that he thought that he couldn't be disrupted, and he didn't know in his multi-billion-dollar company that he was already dead.
Right.
And to me, that is how I feel about all of these people who don't understand what's happening with autonomy. And I think Ford, GM, all these companies, they know. They know. They're not blind to it. They know they can't figure out EV, let alone autonomy. They know they're dead. They're thrashing to your point, and I think that's why they're trying to make their last Hail Mary with hybrids. So it's just fascinating to see kind of history just continually repeat itself. And I feel like we're in that moment right now.
I think you're 100% right. So then Sawyer Merritt again, he says Tesla has made significant strides in improving its supply chain sustainability and human rights practices, according to a new study by the environmental group led by the company or the association called Charge, CHARGE, just like it sounds. Tesla jumped from ninth place to third place in the group's annual auto supply chain leadership and report. Tesla improved across all 8 subsections of the leaderboard, the only automaker to make those kind of improvements across all 8, with changes most noticeable in the fossil-free and environmentally sustainable supply chain section, up 20 percentage points, and boosted a further 20% due to Tesla's positive climate lobbying record. So, I think, that Elon's whole statement from the beginning is about sustainability. I'm shocked that they were ranked lower before. So it calls into question the entire study. But great that they've improved and that they're number 3.
I don't know, Andy. I'm a little surprised that you're shocked by this. I mean, haven't you seen Tesla's ESG score? Like, of course it's going to be bad. I mean, they're no Exxon or Shell. Like, with that ESG score, they're a joke. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, Consumer Reports again, they asked 9,030 Americans about their attitudes towards EVs and their experience with them. Though most of the Consumer Reports studies survey only the magazine subscribers, this one used a representative sample of the entire American public, and respondents earned 1 point for having seen an EV in their neighborhood, 1 point for knowing somebody who owns one, 1 point for riding as a passenger in an EV, and 1 point for driving one at least once. A total of 34% of the respondents earned 0 points. They had never seen one in the neighborhood. They don't know anybody who owns one. They have never ridden in one as a passenger, and they've never driven one. This comes back to this whole business. I'm sure that those people are not in California. Those people are in Iowa. And we need to get to those people in Iowa and to those people in New Mexico and to those people in Missouri, et cetera, et cetera. That's where the market is. We have not penetrated there yet.
It'll happen. It's just going to take time. We're in a slowdown right now. It's just a matter of time. And I would wager that they have seen an EV. They just didn't know they were seeing an EV, right? Which is a whole different thing. And I would say it could even be higher than 34%, right? A lot of times when people answer these type of questions, they don't want to look stupid. And so they'll just say, yeah, of course I've driven in one. Yeah, of course. But it's, humans, like, we have this thing where we always like to have an answer. We need to have an answer. Yes, we've done that. Of course we've done that. We think we're behind the times. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's even higher, but I've never seen an EV. Highly doubtful. Highly doubtful.
Again, they might not know that they've seen one.
Exactly.
So if we turn to the general economy, this is one that you also asked about in the green room before we started. Reuters says orders for long-lasting U.S. manufactured goods fell by the most in nearly 4 years in January, amid a sharp dropping in bookings for commercial aircraft, while the outlook for business investment on equipment was mixed. So these are the airline thing was a major Boeing deal where Boeing had a lot of orders last year, a lot of orders even in December, and then had only 3 orders in the entire month of January. So that really skewed the total number. But even if you get past that number, it's not that great. The report from the Commerce Department on Tuesday added to a series of data this month, including retail sales, housing starts, manufacturing production, in suggesting the economy lost momentum at the start of the year. Some of the weak readings have been blamed on freezing temperatures last month, as well as difficulties adjusting the data for seasonal fluctuations at the start of the year. Well, then I guess we would see that be revised next month, maybe. It says, while economists have taken down their recession warnings, business leaders with boots on the ground are less certain of the economy in the future. Orders for durable goods, items ranging from toasters to aircraft that is meant to last at least 3 years, plunged 6.1% last month. The Commerce Department Census Bureau said that was the largest decline since April 2020, when the economy was reeling from the first wave of COVID. Data for December was also revised lower from 0 to negative 0.3%. Economists polled by Reuters had expected durable goods orders to tumble by 4.5%, so this wasn't a total shock. Orders fell 0.8% year on year in January. Civilian aircraft orders plunged 58.9%. We've already explained that. Overall transportation, obviously this is one that's important to us, overall transportation's orders dropped 16.2 last month. After slipping 0.6 in December, orders for motor vehicles and parts fell only 0.4%. Excluding transportation, excluding all the rest of that stuff, durable goods orders fell 0.3%. So the refrigerators, the washing machines, et cetera, are down, but only 0.3%, not a good number. Automobiles only down 0.6%, I'm sorry, down 0.4%, not a good number, but nothing like the headline number here that we took a look at. And then before you respond, also core capital goods orders were previously reported to have gained 0.2% in December, but core capital goods shipments rose 0.8% after nudging up 0.1 in December. So we are looking at some of the folks buying the computers, buying the kinds of capital goods that they need to run their businesses. That would be a good piece of news. So your thoughts?
Yeah, here are my thoughts. We got a lot of quote unquote hot inflation numbers in January. Okay. They were hot by number standard. Despite that, we still see the stock market running and being resilient. In fact, Tesla is even up, right? Look at Nvidia, look at tech, just in general, S&P 500 hitting all-time highs, despite this fear that inflation is stickier, potentially reacceleration. Now we're baking in less rate cuts, potentially a rate hike. Right, the whole narrative has changed around the Fed and rates, and this was the narrative that everybody thought is why the stock market is doing well. Well, turns out must not be it, because now that whole narrative is a wash. In fact, this morning there's a lot of talk about no rate cuts at all this year. So if you take that to a side, let's go back to January, right? Because January is what triggered all of this. Oh, inflation, whatever, whatever, whatever. You know, all you ever hear is Jerome Powell say, well, we need more than one data point, right? Yet it only took one data point to make everybody think, well, there's no more rate cuts, that's off the table, all this stuff. I think what we're seeing now as we get to February is that, as is every year, no reason we would think this is an anomaly year, the January numbers are garbage. They're seasonally adjusted. They're they're changing methodologies on how they're calculating. They're iterating on it, right? So everything has changed, and you want them to do that, right? So we can have a better, truer, source of numbers. I mean, just look at the jobs numbers, right? When was the last time they got it anywhere near right? So we want this process to happen, but I think people are making too much out of what happened in January, extrapolating that. But on the other hand, it is Good News Tuesday. I think the good news is that now we're seeing that despite the fact that now people are saying we may not have rate cuts, the market's still killing it. So that narrative, in my opinion, is out the window. We have a strong economy, at least on paper, and we're not just doing well in the stock market because of rate cuts or the anticipation of that. Right. So now you start to wonder what happens if we do get rate cuts? What happens if we do start to slow down? This could be a very good news in general for the stock market, although it could be bad. But my point is, maybe January was a bit of an overreaction.
Yes, of course, a very, very, again, as you so correctly point out, to put 1 month's data is ridiculous. You need to see a couple of months, but at the same time, pundits like us, we see these numbers and you at least have to talk about it. You have to at least put it in context. Well,
Yes.
I'll just throw one more at you because it kind of goes along with the narrative I've been talking about for a couple of months. Maybe you and I have discussed this, that these rates just aren't high enough to actually do the kind of damage the Fed would like to see done. And then the evidence of that would be the stock market being as strong as it is. Evidence would be that these small businesses have reported that they don't even need loans, and that only 2% of small businesses said they need a loan. We got this from S&P CoreLogic today. Their Case-Shiller 20-city price index rose 0.2% in December as compared with the previous month. Home prices of the 20 major U.S. metro markets were up 6.1% in the last 12 months, ending in December. And it's everywhere. I took a look at the actual list of the 20 cities. Even Detroit was up. So a broader measure of home prices, the national index rose 0.2% in December also, and was also up 5.5% over the past year. All numbers are seasonally adjusted. San Diego posted the biggest year-over-year home price gain in December, where prices were up year-over-year 8.8%. And it turns out so was my town. The Los Angeles area was also up 8.8% year-over-year. That tells me that the high mortgage rates are not keeping folks from buying those houses. We know, of course, about the shortage of inventory. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's the fact that high interest rates aren't having the impact we want the Fed wants them to have. I think it is. The problem is that these high interest rates is just create more of a divide between, the top tier and the lower tier of people when it comes to wealth distribution. And because there's such few, supply in housing out there, well, the people who are upper middle class and higher, they're at a point where these rates are kind of getting normalized to them, right? You're getting used to it. You're getting used to looking at houses over and over with these rates, or you're starting to think, well, might as well buy now and we can refinance in the future, hopefully, right? If we can swing it, maybe we have 2 or 3 years where we tighten the belt and we're a little bit house poor, but year 4, 5, 6, we're gonna be happy we did that because we'll refinance. It'll be lower. We'll have more equity, right? So I think a lot of people are thinking about that with housing and in general. Keeping rates high is never going to slow that down. If anything, it's going to make housing, I think, more expensive, right? It's too few dollars or too many dollars chasing too few houses, too few supplies out there. It's going to happen. But on the other hand, we have the problem where people are still not making more money. Yes, inflation has subsided, but that doesn't mean prices have come down. And so people haven't made more money, so they're still dealing with the same burden of things being more expensive. And I just don't see these prices coming down anytime soon. Year over year, inflation is going to come down, right? It's going to happen. But this is where the rub is. And the scarier thing is what happens when rates do come down? Does that cause a reacceleration? Do businesses then start raising prices again, thinking they can get away with it? I mean, this is a tough place to be in, to be honest, especially if you're in that lower tier of consumers.
Yeah. Well, you didn't know you were doing this, but you provided the perfect transition here into the consumer confidence survey. The survey's index fell in February. Fell. Consumer confidence fell to 106.7, down from a reading of 110.9 in January. Americans became less worried about rising food and gas prices, but more concerned about the job market, the survey showed. Americans' outlook for the economy in the following months, including their expectations for income and business conditions, declined this month, slipping below a threshold that often signals recession ahead, according to the report. Inflation expectations for the year ahead were lower this month, but still showing 5.2%. Now, there's another, this is one of a couple of 3 different consumer confidence indexes that are out there. I've seen the other one was more in the order of what I think we might be thinking around the 3.2, 3.3% level. But expectations for the year ahead were lowered to 5.2, well below the peak of 7.9 when inflation was running back, a year ago or so. While the survey showed waning concerns over inflation, it captured rising worries over the job market. A similar survey by, here's the other survey. The University of Michigan survey released earlier this month showed that Americans' moods held steady in February, though a second estimate is due later this week, I think on Thursday. So consumer confidence, I think it was the ex-head of Toys R Us yesterday who was interviewed on CNBC, and he said, look, you walk into the grocery store and you're shocked. You're still shocked by the prices. And that's what people are seeing. Gas prices have modified a lot. So the gasoline thing is not, I think, impacting. But when you walk in the grocery store, I know I used to believe that I could feed a person pretty well for $200 a month. You can't come close to
Oh no, no, not no, absolutely not. Um, look, it's here's the problem with the numbers. The numbers try to paint a certain story that just aren't factual, right? It's like whenever you see an NFL team and you see on paper the Cowboys every year, you're like, oh my goodness, they should win the Super Bowl. Like they're stacked. But that does end up happening. On paper, much of the numbers look good. But here's the reality: the freight industry has been in a recession for the last 9 months. Reality. Reality is that people are still going to grocery stores and prices have really not come down and their income hasn't gone up. That's the reality. All right. Reality is that people still can't afford housing. We have a shortage in housing. Reality is that people are struggling out there. For example, too, with the jobs numbers, every single month we have this outstanding jobs number. Yet there's no mechanism to determine how many of those are two jobs for one person.
Yeah.
How many people are double dipping? And this is a real problem that we're not taking into account. And so, yes, you can sit there and you can, say that we have a good economy and all that, stock market's up. These are outliers. All right. These are just complete outliers that don't show what's actually happening, what people are living through on a day-to-day basis. And I think you're going to see this come out in the election. It's going to be the top debates. It's going to be immigration, because not just because people are coming in, but because here are people coming in, taking other people's jobs and willing to do it for less money. Here come people coming in, taking housing spots, right? Which causes rents and houses, all that to go up, right? So that's going to be a big deal. And that reverberates into the economy, which is going to be the second big topic. So this presidential election is going to be on those two topics, and it's going to be up in our face. And so to sit here and say, look at S&P all-time high, look at GDP, look at these jobs these numbers are lying to us. They're lying to us.
Yeah, well, you again, what's the old famous saying about statisticians and liars? So you
Yeah.
can take the stats and you can pretty much turn them to whatever story you want to turn them to. And then again, I think it was Tolstoy in War and Peace who said, "I can put together the greatest plan. I can have all my information together. I can have all of that going, and I actually get into the war, get into the battle, actually get down." Where the bullets are flying and all the plans are out the window. You just have to react in that environment. And best laid plans. So all of what you said is true. I think you and I are probably pretty close to the same page here with regard to the economy being confusing, very confusing. It's really hard to know exactly what is going to happen next, because we've really never been in a situation like this, coming off of that COVID pandemic where all this money was plowed into the system, and where we're continuing not only to plow money into the government spending on infrastructure, but also on a couple of wars. And it's a very dicey kind of environment right now.
Yeah, and then you add in the other two things. One, it's an election year, right? So that's got its own impact. And then two, our debt servicing.
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
you add those and think about our entitlement programs that are going to essentially be extinct in the next decade. I mean, we are in a very strange position, right? I mean, the Fed, everyone talks about the Fed can keep raising rates to make the economy hurt more, but they really can't. They're kind of handcuffed at this point. They can't keep raising rates or they're just going to create a bigger problem.
Yeah, I think if they, some people have talked about them raising one more time. I think that would be a, what would you call it? That would be the kind of raise where they were just trying to make a statement, as opposed to whether they thought another quarter point was actually going to do anything.
Yeah.
But it may be that they feel like people are just not taking them seriously. But as we've just kind of told it at length, I'm just not 100% sure. 5%, 5.25, 5.5, 5.75. I don't think it's going to stop the economy. I just don't think so. It's not that high. If it was 8%, yeah, people would have to make all kinds of new decisions.
So do you think they raise?
No, I think I'm really unclear now. I really think the PCE on Thursday is going to matter a lot. I think that the next CPI is going to matter a lot. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, it's going to, obviously they're not going to raise, they're not going to lower in March. The only reason they would raise in March, I think, would be if the PCE came in super hot. And right now, some people are projecting it'll come in at 0.3. And that would be hot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think these numbers are going to start to come in a little more normalized. I don't think that they're going to continue to come in hot, but we'll have to see what happens. Time will tell.
All right. Well, today we're going to let you go early and we're going to try an experiment here where I'm going to put the Zoom on pause and come back later and see if it's still on pause when we want to do the, what do you call it? The pre-market later this afternoon when the pre-market is actually open. So thanks you so much as always for being here and helping me bring the good news on Tuesday.
Bye, everybody.